Joining me now is Nader Hashemi, the Middle East politics analyst, and thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
What's your overall reaction to the deal? Are you optimistic?
I'm very pessimistic, in fact. Look, let me begin by saying it's obviously a good day that there's a ceasefire, that hostages have been released, that Palestinian prisoners, many of whom were effectively hostages, they've been reunited with their families. That's all great, but one has to look at the, I think, underlying sources of this conflict, which haven't been addressed in Donald Trump's peace plan. In fact, they've been exacerbated, and I'm speaking specifically of the question of occupation. Donald Trump's peace plan, effectively calls for ongoing Israeli occupation and control of the Gaza Strip. No discussion whatsoever of what's happening in the West Bank or in East Jerusalem, and an international sort of control over the Gaza Strip by an external international body headed by the former British Prime Minister, Tony Blair. And of course, the big question about the future of Hamas, disarmament, governance, none of those have been agreed to by one of the key parties to the conflict. So when you put it all together, I'm very skeptical about where this is all headed. And I'm very fearful that about a month from now, the war in Gaza could restart.
I mean, Hamas has said we've heard from them rumblings that they are not going to lay down their weapons or give up power. What would that mean to the situation?
Well, it means basically the status quo that we see today will continue. They've reasserted control over Gaza. In fact, Donald Trump was asked about this question on the plane ride over to Israel, and he had basically acknowledged that, yes, Hamas has reasserted control, and he was pretty clear that he was fine with that happening. And I think that's going to remain the case for the foreseeable future, because Israel couldn't disarm or defeat them. It could weaken them, but it wasn't able to defeat them. And this international stabilization force that is supposed to be comprised of Arab and Muslim countries, they're not going to want to go in and try and do what Israel was unable to do, and that's get into a house-to-house fight with Hamas. That would be a disaster for the political legitimacies of these rulers back in their own countries. So I think we're going to see a situation that basically is in place right now. Gaza completely destroyed and obliterated. People unable to return to their homes because they have no homes to go to. Hamas in control, and Israel still occupying roughly 50% of Gaza.
And so what do we have? Do we have a momentary peace, and do you see this falling apart within weeks, or will it last longer? And is in that Hamas has to rebuild? We're seeing aid coming in. Does that mean weapons and everything else are sneaking back in as well?
Well, it's very difficult to sneak in weapons. I think there's a lot of weapons that Hamas has been able to either capture or produce from Israeli ordnances and bombs that were unexploded. But yes, to your earlier point, I suspect that we're going to see just more of the same, and eventually the conflict is going to restart. I don't know exactly when. I suspect within the next few months is realistic, because Hamas has not agreed to this much of Donald Trump's plan. And I think one has to point out that despite these celebrations that we're seeing today in Israel and in Egypt, that this is a wonderful plan that the world has rallied to support, the fundamental flaw in the plan that should be glaringly obvious to anyone who has a sense of balance and fairness should be apparent. One of the two parties to the conflict was not consulted on the plan. I'm talking about the Palestinians. Not even the pro-Western Palestinians in Ramallah had a voice in crafting this plan. It was very much an Israeli and American plan backed by Arab dictators, and now it's presented as this wonderful, path toward peace in the Middle East. I'm very skeptical about all of this, and so I'm very fearful that this conflict is going to continue, and it's going to restart again, largely because the United States, backed by Canada, refuses to adopt an international law framework toward this conflict. It's a very much a conflict that's still viewed by the United States, Canada, and Europe through an Israeli lens. And unless that changes, and unless there's an approach that is much more rooted in international law, and takes into consideration the safety and security and the right to national self-determination for both peoples, Israelis and Palestinians, this conflict is going to continue.
Okay, Nader, thank you as always for your insight on this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.